In a world where noise fills every corner, where conversations are often layered with opinions, justifications, and explanations, there lies a rare power that is neither loud nor demanding. It is the power of presence. Words can be sharp, they can be persuasive, they can be comforting, but they are only one dimension of human expression. Presence, however, is multidimensional. It does not require explanation, it does not seek validation, and it does not depend on recognition. Presence carries its own authority, and its strength lies in silence, in awareness, and in the depth of being that radiates without the need for verbal expression. When two people stand together, one may speak endlessly, filling the air with arguments, stories, or attempts to prove themselves. The other may remain quiet, grounded, and still, yet the one who is silent often leaves the deeper impression. Why is this so? It is because presence cannot be fabricated. Words can be memorized, rehearsed, even manipulated. Presence, however, is the result of inner alignment. It reflects the state of one's mind, one's breath, one's body, and one's awareness. When you enter a room, your words are not the first thing people notice. It is your energy, the way you carry yourself, the weight or lightness of your being. This is the silent communication that precedes speech, and often it speaks louder than any words could. The cultivation of presence requires a discipline that goes beyond learning vocabulary or practicing rhetoric. It is not about what you say, but how deeply you are rooted in yourself. Presence arises when the mind is not scattered, when the body is not restless, and when the emotions are not in constant turbulence. Presence arises when the self is centered, when attention is no longer pulled in 1,000 directions but returns to its own source. In this state, silence becomes powerful because it is not empty. It is filled with awareness, filled with clarity, filled with a kind of invisible gravity that others can feel. To understand presence, one must first understand the limitation of words. Words can point toward truth, but they are not truth itself. They can describe love, but they are not love. They can outline freedom, but they are not freedom. They can teach methods of peace, but they are not peace. The mind often clings to words as if they are the essence of knowledge, but wisdom is found in the silence that holds those words, in the space between them. When you speak too much, you weaken your own presence because your energy leaks into constant explanation. But when you speak less, when your words are chosen with awareness, each word carries weight, and the silence between them deepens their impact. Presence is also tested in conflict. Imagine being in an argument. One person raises their voice, insisting on their perspective, demanding to be understood. The other remains calm, not from weakness, but from strength. Their silence is not passive, it is active. It absorbs, it observes. It does not react impulsively. In that silence lies the refusal to be pulled into chaos. That silence has more influence than shouting ever could. This is the strength of presence, the ability to remain untouched while others are carried away by waves of emotion. Presence is not about avoiding words forever. It is about knowing when words are necessary and when they are not. A single sentence spoken from deep awareness can have more transformative power than an hour of endless speaking. A glance filled with understanding can heal more than paragraphs of advice. A moment of stillness can communicate more than elaborate speeches. In the practice of Shaolin training, movements are disciplined, deliberate, and infused with intention. This is also true for words. When they arise from presence, they are deliberate, they are necessary, and they are infused with truth. To cultivate presence, one must return again and again to silence. Silence of the mouth is only the beginning. More importantly, there must be silence of the mind. The mind constantly generates commentary, judgments, stories, and anticipations. To be present, one must observe this chatter and allow it to quiet down. Breathing deeply, grounding the body, and focusing awareness in the present moment, these practices strengthen presence. From this grounded state, even without speaking, your being communicates. Others sense it not through hearing, but through feeling. Presence has a way of drawing people in, not through effort, but through authenticity. When you are fully present, you do not need to perform, you do not need to impress, you do not need to prove. People feel safe in your stillness, they feel seen in your awareness, and they feel touched by your authenticity. Presence is magnetic because it is rare in a world obsessed with noise. Most people are consumed by their thoughts, distracted by devices, restless in their bodies. To encounter someone who is fully here in this moment without needing to say much, that is a gift. The art of presence is not something that can be faked or borrowed. It cannot be achieved through memorized lines or imitated gestures. Presence is cultivated through discipline, through stillness, through inner work. It comes from the patience of observing yourself, the humility of letting go of unnecessary words, and the courage of standing silently in your truth. Presence is a reflection of who you are when you are not trying to be anything else. It is not an act. It is the essence of being itself. In a world that celebrates constant motion, speed, and noise, stillness often appears to be a weakness or a waste of time. Yet, when we look deeper, we find that stillness is not the absence of power. It is the origin of it. Stillness is not laziness, nor is it passivity. It is a conscious state where the mind, body, and spirit align in such a way that clarity emerges from chaos and strength emerges from silence. In stillness, the world outside may continue to rush, but the one who is still is no longer enslaved by its urgency. The power of stillness comes from its ability to detach us from the endless momentum of thoughts and emotions. Every day, the human mind produces countless ideas, worries, and judgments. If left unchecked, this flood of mental activity can lead to restlessness and exhaustion. But when one learns to step back, to quiet the inner noise, a new type of awareness arises. This awareness is sharper, calmer, and more expansive than the restless chatter of the mind. In stillness, one begins to see not only the surface of life, but also the deeper currents that shape it. Stillness also teaches patience. In a time where everything is expected instantly, answers, results, recognition, the one who practices stillness learns to wait. Waiting does not mean inactivity, rather, it means alignment with timing. A seed planted today does not bear fruit tomorrow, and yet in stillness one accepts this natural rhythm. From patience comes resilience. From resilience comes strength. It is in waiting without resistance that transformation takes root. The physical body reflects the state of the inner being. When one is restless inside, the body is tense, the breath is shallow, and movements are scattered. But in stillness, the breath deepens, the muscles release their grip, and the body becomes a vessel rather than a prison. Energy, once blocked by constant agitation, begins to flow more freely. The body becomes lighter, more open, more alive. What was once hidden beneath layers of tension is revealed when the body learns to be still. In stillness, power is not forced but cultivated. A river that moves too quickly churns and foams, scattering its strength in all directions. But a calm lake, though still on the surface, holds depth and quiet force. Similarly, the one who embraces stillness holds power not in outward display but in inner control. They do not need to prove their strength to others, for the strength radiates naturally. This is why stillness is often mistaken for weakness. It hides its force until it is needed, and when released, it is precise and unstoppable. Stillness also sharpens perception. When there is no rush to speak, to act, or to respond, one begins to notice the subtle details that are usually missed. The tone of a voice, the pause between words, the feeling in the air, all become clear in stillness. The still person sees what others overlook. They are able to read not just situations, but people with accuracy. This clarity is not mystical. It is simply the result of removing the clutter that blinds the senses. The power of stillness extends into decision-making. Choices made in haste often lead to regret, but choices made from stillness carry wisdom. In the silence of stillness, motives are revealed, intentions are clarified, and direction becomes obvious. Action taken from this state is not reactionary, but deliberate. It is not the loudest or the fastest action, but it is the action that creates real impact. When stillness becomes a practice, it transforms the way one experiences life. Noise from the outside world no longer dictates the rhythm of the inner world. Instead, the person grounded in stillness moves with intention. The world may try to pull them in many directions, but they are not swayed. They do not scatter themselves across meaningless pursuits because they know where their energy belongs. Their power lies not in doing more, but in doing what matters. Stillness reveals itself as a mirror. In it, one confronts what lies beneath the surface. Restlessness, fear, longing all rise when silence deepens. Many avoid stillness because it confronts them with themselves. But it is only in facing this reflection that one can rise above it. The still person does not run from the discomfort. They sit with it, learn from it, and eventually master it. In this mastery lies liberation. The strength of stillness is timeless. Long before modern distractions, ancient traditions honored silence as sacred. The monk, the sage, the warrior, all understood that stillness was a weapon as much as a sanctuary. It sharpened the mind, calmed the heart, and prepared the spirit. The world may have changed, but the truth remains: stillness holds within it the essence of power. To embrace stillness is to enter a state of renewal. In the same way that a bow must be drawn back before the arrow can fly, stillness is the drawing back of the human spirit. It gathers strength, focuses intention, and aligns energy for the moment of release. Without this pause, actions are scattered, unfocused, and weak. With stillness, every action becomes meaningful. Every word becomes intentional. Every step becomes aligned. Stillness is not escape from life. It is life in its purest form. It is the point from which all clarity, strength, and wisdom flow. It is the grounding force that allows one to meet chaos with composure and to transform noise into harmony. It is where the self dissolves into something greater, where the restless becomes calm, and where power reveals itself without struggle. There is a reason why the eyes are often described as the windows to the soul. To meet someone's gaze without wavering, without retreat, and without disguising yourself behind nervous movements is not only a social skill, it is a form of presence. Eye contact is not about confrontation, nor is it about dominance. It is about stillness, clarity, and the courage to stand in the reality of the moment. When your eyes do not dart away, when they rest firmly yet softly upon another, you transmit something beyond words. You transmit certainty. Unshakable eye contact is not a trick or technique you use to appear strong. It is a natural expression of an inner state. If your mind is restless, filled with doubt or insecurity, your gaze will reveal it. If your heart is burdened by fear, your eyes will carry the weight of hesitation. But when you cultivate inner stillness, when you are not caught in the storm of thoughts and emotions, then your eyes naturally stabilize. They stop running away from the moment, and they begin to anchor you within it. To train this quality, one must first recognize the subtle movements that occur when discomfort arises. Think about the last time someone looked at you directly and you felt exposed. Perhaps your eyes quickly shifted downward, or you found yourself blinking too much, or your gaze wandered toward the floor, the wall, or any distraction that could give you relief. That small act of looking away is a signal of resistance. It is the body trying to escape the intensity of connection. If you want to develop unshakable eye contact, you must train yourself not to escape. There is a practice within meditation that speaks directly to this. When the mind becomes restless, the instruction is simple: do not run, do not fight, simply stay. The same principle applies to the eyes. When they want to flee, stay. When you feel the urge to avoid, remain. The strength of eye contact is not born from force, it is born from willingness to remain present. Eye contact is more than just a meeting of vision, it is a merging of energies. When two pairs of eyes meet, a current of information flows between them. Words can be deceptive, voices can disguise, but eyes rarely lie. They communicate sincerity, hesitation, interest, rejection, or calmness without a single syllable being spoken. That is why in moments of truth, whether it is love, conflict, teaching, or silence, the eyes always reveal what the heart cannot hide. To hold the gaze of another without trembling is to demonstrate that you are not afraid of being seen. And not only that, you are not afraid of seeing. Many people look away not only because they do not want to be revealed, but because they do not want to truly witness what is in front of them. They fear the rawness of another person's being, the depth of their honesty, or the pain reflected in their face. But when you hold eye contact, you silently declare, I am ready to see and I am ready to be seen. This does not mean your gaze should be hard, unblinking, or aggressive. That would only replace fear with tension, and tension is not strength. True strength is relaxed. The unshakable gaze is soft, steady, and unhurried. It is like the surface of a calm lake, still enough to reflect clearly, yet deep enough to contain what lies beneath. Such eyes do not push, they do not pull, they simply allow. Training yourself to look steadily into the eyes of another is also training yourself to look steadily into your own reflection. When you stand before a mirror, notice if you can hold your own gaze without turning away. Many cannot. To look at yourself without judgment, without critique, and without fleeing is an exercise in self-acceptance. The steadiness you cultivate with yourself is the same steadiness you will naturally offer to others. The practice extends beyond social interactions. In the Shaolin tradition, discipline of the eyes is a form of discipline of the mind. A scattered gaze is a scattered mind. A steady gaze is a steady mind. When your eyes fix upon a point, whether it is the horizon, the flame of a candle, or the eyes of another person, your attention gathers. It no longer disperses in all directions, but it concentrates. This concentration becomes a source of power. Not the power to dominate others, but the power to be rooted within yourself. Unshakable eye contact teaches you to remain calm in the face of intensity. When someone is angry, their eyes often burn with heat. To hold their gaze calmly is to show that you will not be consumed by their fire. When someone is vulnerable, their eyes often tremble with uncertainty. To meet their gaze steadily is to give them stability. When someone speaks truth, their eyes carry weight. To stay with them in that truth is to share in its strength. It is important to understand that this practice is not limited to people. To look deeply at the world itself is also a form of unshakable eye contact. When you watch the sky, the mountains, or the endless horizon, you practice meeting existence without looking away. The vastness may feel overwhelming, but remaining with it builds resilience. You learn to face immensity without shrinking. Ultimately, eye contact is a mirror of your inner state. If you can remain unshakable in the eyes, it means you have cultivated unshakable ground within. It means the storms of fear, insecurity, and doubt no longer sway you so easily. It means you can stand openly in the presence of another without losing yourself. It means you are able to stay, to witness, and to accept reality exactly as it is unfolding in the present moment. A gesture is often seen as something small, fleeting, almost invisible to the noise of life. It could be the movement of a hand, the way a glance is offered, the tone of a word spoken without calculation. But behind every gesture lies intention, and behind every intention lies the energy that fuels human interaction. What seems simple on the surface can carry the depth of entire histories, silent stories, and unspoken truths. The resonance of a gesture is not found in its size, but in the frequency it awakens in another being. When you think about resonance, you understand it is not something forced. A string vibrates when another one tuned to the same frequency begins to move. No effort is required beyond the existence of harmony. The same principle applies to gestures. When a gesture is born from sincerity, from presence, from the alignment of thought and action, it carries with it a vibration that does not fade quickly. It lingers in the memory. It shapes the perception. It can plant a seed that grows long after the moment has passed. The strength of a gesture lies not in performance but in authenticity. A smile that masks resentment has no weight. A word spoken out of duty carries no lasting imprint. But the smallest acknowledgement, the briefest moment of presence, when carried by genuine energy, can shift the state of another person entirely. In a world where so much is constructed, where appearances dominate, the rarity of an authentic gesture makes it powerful. It cuts through the layers of noise and lands directly in the heart. Gestures resonate because they bypass the intellect and speak directly to the deeper layers of being. You cannot analyze why a certain look of kindness given to you years ago still remains vivid in memory. You cannot measure why a brief touch on the shoulder gave strength in a moment of weakness. What lingers is not the surface of the act, but the vibration it carried. When energy is pure, when it is not attached to self-interest, it leaves a mark that time does not easily erase. There is also responsibility in this. Every movement you make, every word you send into the air, carries with it a charge. Some charges heal, some wound. Some bring clarity, some confuse. Many go unnoticed, but some penetrate deeply, shaping the inner landscape of those who receive them. A gesture can be a gift or a burden. The resonance may uplift or it may weigh down. To become aware of this is to begin walking with consciousness, knowing that what you release into the world is never lost. It always finds a place to land. Resonance is not limited to grand moments. It is most often found in the ordinary. The way you listen when someone speaks. The pause you allow instead of interrupting. The patience you embody when another struggles to express themselves. None of these require elaborate action, but they all require awareness. And because awareness is rare, they are felt deeply. A gesture that resonates does not need to be remembered by the one who gives it, but it will be remembered by the one who receives it. In the practice of discipline, whether physical, mental, or spiritual, gestures carry codes. The bow of respect before entering a space, the deliberate placement of objects in order, the careful way breath is drawn before movement begins. These are not empty traditions. They are gestures that resonate with meaning beyond their physical form. They connect one moment to another, one person to a lineage, one practice to an entire philosophy of life. They remind the body and mind that what we do is not separate from what we are. The resonance of a gesture does not end at the individual level. Entire cultures are built upon shared gestures. The way greetings are exchanged, the way silence is held, the way meals are shared. All of these create a collective vibration. They shape the atmosphere of a people. They influence how generations relate to one another. A single gesture repeated through time becomes tradition, and tradition becomes identity. In this way, what begins as something small becomes something that defines entire groups, carrying with it the weight of belonging and memory. But resonance also requires receptivity. Not every gesture will be received as intended. A word spoken with love may be misheard. A hand extended in support may be rejected. This does not erase the intention, but it reminds us that resonance is an interaction. It requires both the one who sends and the one who receives. Yet even when unseen, even when unacknowledged, energy released does not vanish. It continues to circulate, sometimes returning in unexpected ways. Awareness of this creates patience. The gesture is offered not for immediate recognition, but because it is the natural expression of who you are. If it resonates now, it nourishes. If it resonates later, it still nourishes. And if it never seems to resonate, it still reflects the alignment within yourself. The act of giving a gesture with sincerity already shapes your own being, regardless of the response it generates outside. The art of living, then, is not only in grand choices but in the accumulation of gestures. Each movement, each word, each silence creates ripples. Some ripples fade quickly, some return with waves of transformation. To live with awareness of this is to understand that the world is not changed only by massive actions, but by the subtle, constant flow of resonance that gestures create. In every moment you are either adding to harmony or adding to noise. The gesture you choose determines which one it will be. Sincerity of heart is not a performance for the world to see. It is not a mask we put on when others are watching. And it is not a strategy to gain favor or recognition. It is the quiet alignment between thought, word, and action that flows from the depth of one's being. Sincerity is not loud, it is not forceful, it does not demand attention. It is subtle, yet it carries an undeniable weight. To meet someone with sincerity of heart is to encounter truth unclothed, without manipulation, without disguise. It is the kind of presence that disarms defenses and invites authenticity in return. The human mind often builds layers of protection, habits of pretension, and strategies of self-preservation. These are masks that arise from fear of rejection, from insecurity, from the desire to appear stronger than one feels. But sincerity dissolves these layers. To live with sincerity is to strip away the unnecessary coverings and to allow the essence of one's being to stand as it is. This sincerity is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength, for it requires the courage to be real in a world where many prefer illusion. When sincerity of heart becomes the foundation of one's life, relationships change. The way one speaks, the way one listens, the way one walks through the world begins to shift. Sincere words carry a resonance that cannot be fabricated. People may not always agree with them, but they feel their truth. Sincere actions have a weight that extends beyond the surface. They inspire trust because they are not born out of calculation, but from an inner commitment to honesty and clarity. Sincerity does not mean perfection. It does not mean one will never make mistakes or speak words that fall short of wisdom. But sincerity ensures that even in error, the intention is clear, the heart is open, and the path remains guided by authenticity rather than pretense. A person who is sincere in heart does not fear admitting wrong because their identity is not built on appearances but on truth. This is why sincerity becomes a powerful anchor in times of uncertainty. When storms arise, when confusion spreads, sincerity of heart does not waver because it is rooted deeper than circumstance. The cultivation of sincerity begins in silence. In the quiet moments when no one is watching, one must ask, what do I truly want? What do I truly value? What do I truly stand for? Without these inner questions, sincerity cannot grow, for sincerity is not about showing others who you are, it is about knowing yourself without disguise. If you do not know your own heart, how can you be sincere with others? And so, sincerity demands inner clarity, and inner clarity is born from honest self-examination. In a world filled with noise and constant stimulation, Sincerity is rare because silence is rare. Many are uncomfortable with silence because silence strips away distraction and forces one to confront the truth of what is inside. Yet sincerity cannot survive in a restless mind that refuses to look inward. To cultivate sincerity is to welcome silence, to sit with one's own fears, contradictions, and desires, and to allow the heart to speak without censorship. Sincerity of heart also transforms the way one approaches work and purpose. When effort is given sincerely, without the hidden motive of recognition or reward, the work carries a different energy. It is lighter, freer, more sustainable, because it is not tied to external validation. When one acts from sincerity, the act itself becomes its own fulfillment. The painter does not paint for applause. The teacher does not teach for approval. The monk does not practice for admiration. They act sincerely, and in that sincerity, the act becomes pure. At the same time, sincerity is not naive. To live with sincerity is not to expose oneself blindly to the harm of others or to abandon discernment. It is to see clearly, to feel deeply, and yet to choose not to cover one's essence with layers of falseness. Sincerity is wise. It knows that honesty without compassion can wound, and openness without boundaries can harm. But sincerity balances honesty with kindness, clarity with patience, strength with gentleness. This is why sincerity is not only a personal virtue, but a social force. It creates spaces where trust can grow, where misunderstanding can dissolve, and where human connection becomes possible. Sincerity of heart is also the root of spiritual practice. One may repeat rituals, recite prayers, or perform disciplines, but if the heart is not sincere, the actions remain empty. The external form may impress others, but the inner reality remains untouched. Only sincerity can bridge the gap between the visible and the invisible, between the practice and the purpose. When the heart is sincere, even a single breath of mindfulness, even a single step walked in awareness, carries immeasurable depth. Without sincerity, 1,000 rituals remain hollow. There is also a quiet freedom in sincerity. Pretending, performing, and wearing masks requires constant effort, constant vigilance, and constant fear of being exposed. But sincerity removes this burden. It allows one to breathe freely, to live openly, to move without the weight of deception. In sincerity, life becomes simple, even if it remains challenging. Simplicity here does not mean lack of complexity, but the absence of contradiction between inner truth and outer expression. When sincerity of heart is practiced, the world responds differently. Some may resist it, for sincerity exposes what is hidden and unsettles those who are attached to illusion. But others will be drawn to it, nourished by it, and inspired by it, because sincerity awakens sincerity. The heart that is met with truth finds the courage to release its own disguises. In this way, sincerity of heart becomes contagious, spreading not by force but by resonance, like a flame that quietly lights another flame without diminishing its own fire. There is a quiet wisdom in the act of letting go. To many, it may seem like a loss, a surrender, or even a defeat. Yet when one truly understands the nature of life, it becomes clear that letting go is not weakness, but strength, not emptiness, but clarity, not the end, but the beginning of something new. Letting go with grace requires a deep trust in the flow of existence, a recognition that holding on to what no longer serves only binds us to suffering. Grace is not only in the act itself, but in the way the heart remains open, in the way the mind softens, and in the way the spirit accepts change without resistance. When a person clings to what has already dissolved, they carry unnecessary weight. The mind holds on to old stories, the body carries old pain, and the spirit becomes heavy with attachments that restrict its natural movement. Letting go is not about erasing the past or pretending that it never existed. It is about loosening the grip that keeps one chained to moments that cannot be revived. With grace, one does not struggle against what is gone. With grace, one acknowledges the impermanence of all things, bows to what has been, and allows it to dissolve into silence. This is the discipline of presence, the recognition that life is happening now, not in the shadows of what once was. Grace transforms the act of letting go from something painful into something liberating. Without grace, letting go feels like tearing a piece of oneself away. But with grace, it becomes a release, like setting a bird free from its cage or watching a leaf fall gently from a tree. The difference lies in the quality of awareness. When awareness is sharp and calm, one does not experience loss in letting go. Instead, one experiences expansion, a lightness that allows space for new energies to arrive. To let go with grace is to recognize the futility of control. Life cannot be forced into permanence. The seasons do not wait for one's approval to change. The tides do not ask for permission before they rise and fall. Likewise, human experience moves with its own rhythm. When the mind insists on control, tension arises. When the heart insists on possession, suffering follows. Grace comes from the recognition that nothing truly belongs to us. Relationships, achievements, possessions, even identity itself, all are temporary expressions moving through time. To grasp them tightly is to fight the very nature of life. To release them gracefully is to align with the flow of existence itself. In Shaolin practice, discipline is often misunderstood as rigidity. In truth, discipline is fluidity. It is the art of knowing when to hold firm and when to release, when to act and when to yield. Letting go with grace is a discipline of the spirit. It requires humility, for the ego always seeks to control and possess. It requires patience, for the mind often struggles with silence and uncertainty. And it requires faith, for the heart must learn to trust what cannot be seen. This practice is not learned in one moment. It is cultivated over time, through awareness, through reflection, through the willingness to let life unfold as it must. The absence of grace in letting go creates resistance. Resistance creates friction. Friction creates suffering. Imagine carrying a rope that is burning in the hands, but refusing to let go because of attachment to the rope itself. The fire continues to burn, the pain continues to increase, and still the grip remains tight. Grace is the wisdom to release the rope before the pain becomes unbearable. It is the recognition that one's well-being is more valuable than the illusion of control. When the heart learns to release gracefully, it also learns to remain soft. Many let go with bitterness, with resentment, with anger. But such letting go is incomplete, for the energy of attachment still lingers. Graceful release leaves no residue behind. It is not about abandoning or rejecting, but about bowing and allowing. This bowing is an inner posture, not of defeat but of reverence. Reverence for the impermanence of life, reverence for the lessons learned, reverence for the truth that all things come and go. In silence, one discovers the depth of letting go. Words often complicate the process, as the mind attempts to justify or explain. But silence carries its own wisdom. When the mind grows quiet, the heart speaks more clearly. In that clarity, one sees that letting go is not erasing but transforming. Energy is not destroyed, it changes form. What is released does not vanish but becomes part of the greater whole. Through grace, one becomes part of that transformation, flowing rather than resisting, aligning rather than fighting. There is dignity in this way of release. To let go with grace is to carry oneself with balance even in times of change. It is to embody calmness when everything around seems uncertain. It is to remain centered in the storm, allowing what must pass to pass without clinging, without despair. This is not indifference. It is not coldness. It is the maturity of spirit that knows that the beauty of life lies in its impermanence. The journey of letting go is not linear. At times, one may think they have released, only to find traces of attachment returning. Grace is patient even with this. It does not demand perfection. It accepts the process, knowing that each breath of release makes the spirit lighter, even if complete freedom takes time. Just as water carves stone, not through force but through persistence, so too does grace shape the heart through gentle repetition of release. Letting go with grace does not erase connection. It deepens it. By releasing attachment, one allows love, respect, and memory to exist without chains. By releasing expectation, one allows life to surprise and unfold naturally. By releasing control, one opens the door to transformation and renewal. What once felt like an ending begins to feel like a passage, a transition into something beyond comprehension. Grace makes this passage beautiful, dignified, and free from unnecessary struggle,